Imagine a place so surreal, so defiant of the modern world, that it feels like another planet, hiding in plain sight, not in some distant galaxy, but here on Earth, at the edge of the Arabian Peninsula, where the desert meets the sea. A land where skyscrapers are not made of glass and steel, but of sun-dried mud and straw, towering 8 stories high, standing firm for 500 years. A place where the trees weep a thick crimson resin, known as dragon's blood, and a bottomless sinkhole in the desert is whispered about as the Barhout, the well of hell. This is Yemen. For 3,000 years, this was Arabia Felix, the fortunate Arabia. It was the legendary home of the Queen of Sheba, the beating heart of the ancient incense roots, and the very birthplace of the coffee you may be drinking right now. But today, that history is being buried under the rubble of a war the world has largely chosen to forget. While global cameras are pointed elsewhere, a child dies here every 10 minutes from causes that are entirely preventable. This is a country where the banking system has collapsed so completely that people pay for groceries with paper coupons instead of cash. Where one of the youngest populations on Earth has been handed rifles larger than their own bodies. Yemen is a living archive of humanity, caught in the grip of the world's worst man-made humanitarian crisis. How did a nation that once held the keys to global trade and ancient wisdom simply vanish from our collective conscience? How did the fortunate Arabia become the most forgotten country on Earth? Today, we go inside the silence. We look past the headlines to find the soul of a land where time still breathes. But the world has stopped listening. To understand what the world is currently losing, you have to go to the very edge of the map. Not the edge of civilization, but one of its most ancient and improbable frontiers. Just 155 miles off the southern coast of mainland Yemen lies Socotra, an island that belongs more to myth than geography. Isolated in the Arabian Sea for millions of years, it evolved into a biological world unto itself. Scientists call it the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean because more than 1/3 of its plant life exists nowhere else on this planet. The most iconic inhabitant is the dragon's blood tree. It rises from the windswept Dixon Plateau like an umbrella turned inside out by a forgotten storm, a canopy of dark, interlocking branches spreading wide against a scorched sky, its trunk impossibly slender. Locals believe it grew from the blood of a dragon slain in ancient combat. For centuries, the deep red resin it weeps has been used to seal wounds, dye cloth, and paint the walls of holy places. Giant tortoises weighing 100 kilograms roam the shores. Schools of spinner dolphins perform acrobatic spirals in waters so clear they appear lit from below. Leaving the island for the mainland, the desert reveals another impossibility: Shibam. Often called the Manhattan of the desert, it is a city that rises like a forest of clay from the flat desert floor. Not a city of steel and glass, but of 500 mud brick towers reaching up to 9 stories high. Structures built more than 500 years ago using only mud, straw, and timber. They are intelligent buildings. Thick walls absorb the scorching midday heat and release it slowly through the cold desert night. This is the earliest known example of planned, vertical urban construction in human history. Yemen built the skyscraper centuries before the modern world ever conceived of one. In the cool highland air stands Sana'a, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth. Tradition holds that it was founded by Shem, the son of Noah, 2,500 years ago. To walk through its ancient lanes is to enter a living archive. The city is celebrated for its gingerbread architecture, multi-story homes of baked brick and volcanic stone decorated with intricate white gypsum patterns that look like delicate lacework, frozen in stone. Every morning, light filters through the Camarilla, stained glass windows of alabaster, and colored glass, casting pools of amber, turquoise, and rose across the floors of homes that have been continuously occupied for 25 centuries. These towers aren't just homes. Each one reflects the social architecture of the family within. The lower floors belong to storage and animals. The middle floors to family life. And the very top, the mafraj, or room with a view, is the social heart, where guests are received, decisions are made, and the affairs of the community are discussed over sweet tea and the scent of burning incense. Is a land where the impossible becomes the norm. Ancient villages like Al-Hajera cling to near vertical cliff faces in the Haraz Mountains, appearing to grow directly out of the rock as if gravity had been negotiated. In Wadi Dawan, the village of Haid al-Jazil perches on a lone rock monolith, isolated from the outside world, like a sandcastle built by a giant and forgotten by the tide. But the true soul of this land is not found in stone or altitude. It is found in a concept the Yemeni people call Karam, a sacred code of hospitality that functions as both a moral doctrine and a social contract. In Yemen, a guest is a blessing from God. A stranger will be offered food and hot spiced tea before they are ever asked their name. This is a culture that has been refining the art of daily existence for 3,000 years, turning generosity into a form of civilization itself. This is the Yemen the headlines don't show. A forgotten earth where time doesn't run forward, but in slow, ancient circles, and where every street corner holds a story older than memory. To look at Yemen today is to see a nation in shadow. But for millennia, it was the luminous center of the ancient world. There was a time when this land did not merely participate in global history, it drove it. The Romans called this corner of the peninsula Arabia Felix, Fortunate Arabia, and the name was earned, not given. The story begins with the kingdom of Saba, or Sheba, founded around the 10th century BC. This was a civilization built not on military conquest, but on the mastery of two things: water and scent. In the middle of a barren desert, the Sabians constructed the Great Dam of Marib, a true engineering marvel of the ancient world. This massive earthwork system stretched nearly 600 meters in length. It redirected monsoon rains into a sophisticated network of irrigation channels and sluice gates. Consequently, it transformed a harsh wasteland into a blooming green paradise that supported tens of thousands of people for over 1,000 years. When the dam finally broke, the Bible and the Quran both recorded the event as a calamity of historical memory, a civilization washed away by its own success. That abundance fueled a legendary wealth that echoes through Scripture. According to both the Bible and the Quran, it was here that the Queen of Sheba, known locally as Bilqis, ruled a prosperous civilization rich in gold, frankincense, and devotion. Her capital at Marib was a city of pillars and temples. The Maram Bilqis, the temple of the moon god, still stands today, 5 slender columns rising from the desert, like the fingers of a buried civilization reaching for the sky. Yemen's golden age rested on a trade monopoly the ancient world depended upon: the incense root. The precious resins, frankincense, and myrrh burned in the temples of Rome, Egypt, and Persia were produced exclusively in the mountains and valleys of southern Arabia and the Horn of Africa. Yemeni merchants controlled the supply chain, the routes, and the pricing, extracting enormous tolls from caravan passing in through cities like Shibam, Marib, and Barakish. For centuries, Yemen's economy was the beating artery of the ancient Mediterranean. Centuries later, Yemen gave the world another global obsession: coffee. Sufi monks in the highland monasteries of Yemen are believed to have been among the first to cultivate and brew the coffee plant, consuming it during long nights of prayer and devotion. The port city of Al-Makka, known to the West as Mocha, became, for over a century, the sole source of coffee for the entire globe. Every time someone orders a mocha today, they are borrowing the name of a Yemeni port that once powered the world's economy. The city of Zabid, once the intellectual heartbeat of the Islamic world, was where scholars codified the branch of mathematics we now call algebra, the foundation underlying every computer, every smartphone, every satellite navigation system operating today. And at the center of all this influence lay Yemen's geography. Located at the entrance to the Red Sea, its position at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, meaning Gate of Tears in Arabic, gave it control over the main passage between Europe, Africa, and Asia. Whoever controlled Yemen controlled the pulse of global trade. For rival states throughout history, this Yemen not merely a neighbor, but a prize. It was a land of kings, scholars, and engineers of extraordinary ingenuity. But the same geography that made Yemen fortunate would eventually become the very reason it was torn apart. The great tragedy of Yemen is that the world never stopped wanting what Yemen had. It only stopped caring about what happened to the people who lived there. The collapse of a civilization rarely arrives in a single moment. It is a slow erosion, a crumbling of the invisible foundations that hold everything together. For Yemen, the modern unraveling began in 1990, a year of supposed triumph. The North and South, once bitter rivals, divided by the Cold War, were unified into one republic. Celebrations filled the streets of Sana'a. But beneath the flags, the new nation was a fragile patchwork of groups with profoundly different tribal identities, religious traditions, and political ambitions that had never truly aligned. At the center of this fragile union was one man, Ali Abdullah Saleh, who would rule Yemen for 33 years. Saleh was a political survivalist of extraordinary skill, and he described his own governing philosophy with a now famous phrase: dancing on the heads of snakes. He played tribal leaders, military generals, and religious factions against one another with calculated precision, preventing any single group from accumulating enough power to challenge him. To understand what this cost ordinary Yemenis, consider the story of Dr. Hassan al-Wazir, a physician who trained in Cairo in the 1990s and returned home to Sana'a to practice medicine, a choice he made out of patriotism, believing in what Yemen could become. For several years, he built a modest but stable life, a clinic, a salary, a family. Then the salary stopped. Not because the hospital had no money, but because the money had been redirected, siphoned upward, through layers of bureaucratic corruption, into the accounts of officials who never set foot in a ward. Dr. al-Wazir continued working anyway. He is still working today, still largely unpaid, because the alternative is to leave his patients without a doctor. His story, multiplied across thousands of teachers, nurses, engineers, and civil servants, is the human mathematics of Saleh's system. While Saleh maintained the appearance of stability, his inner circle quietly drained the national treasury. Investigators later estimated that Saleh personally amassed a fortune of between $32 and $60 billion. This in a country where 60% of the population lived on less than $1 a day. Infrastructure was left to rot. Schools went unbuilt. Roads went unrepaired. Yemen sat atop significant oil and natural gas reserves, yet became dependent on importing fuel from neighboring Oman, because no one had invested in the refineries needed to process it domestically. Gasoline prices tripled. The domestic economy collapsed inward. In the northern mountains, in the rugged Saada governorate, a new force was taking shape. A young cleric named Hussein al-Houthi led a religious movement called the Believing Youth, members of the Zaydite Shia minority who felt systematically marginalized by Sana'a and increasingly alarmed by the spread of Saudi-influenced Sunni conservatism. What began as a campaign to revive Zaydite religious identity grew angrier and more political as the government ignored their grievances. And, they believed, allowed foreign, ideological influence to erode their culture. In 2004, government forces tracked Hussein al-Houthi to a mountain cave in Saada and killed him. He became a martyr instantly. What had been a regional religious movement hardened into a military force, and hardened further with each government offensive launched against it. 6 wars in 6 years only made the Houthis stronger, more experienced, and more resentful. By the time of the 2011 Arab Spring, which swept across the Arab world and finally brought down Saleh himself, the Houthis were no longer a fringe movement. They were a battle-hardened army with a cause. The Arab Spring gave Yemen a moment of hope that was quickly swallowed by chaos. Saleh stepped down under international pressure, replaced by his deputy, Abd Rabbu Mansur Hadi, through a transitional process managed by the Gulf Cooperation Council. But the transition was thin, a change of face without a change of structure. The deep patronage networks, the tribal militias, the corrupt military command, all remained. Hadi's government never consolidated real authority. In late 2014, the Houthis saw their opening. They marched into Sana'a, and then something almost incomprehensible happened. Saleh, the man who had spent years waging war against the Houthis, secretly allied with them. It was the most cynical calculation in modern Yemeni history. The former dictator joined forces with his former enemies to destroy the government that had replaced him. The Houthis used the alliance to acquire the heavy weapons of the national military. Within months, they had overrun the capital, dissolved the government, and placed Hadi under house arrest. He escaped to Aden, then to Riyadh. The regional powers could not allow this. To Saudi Arabia and the UAE, a Houthi-controlled Yemen was intolerable, seen as a beachhead for their arch-rival Iran, which had extended its support to the Houthis. In March 2015, a coalition led by Saudi Arabia launched a massive military campaign, airstrikes, a naval blockade, and a ground war that drew in multiple factions. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the Gate of Tears, became a zone of fire. Ports were closed. Airports were destroyed. The outside world came rushing in with weapons, and the people of Yemen were sealed inside. This is the vicious cycle that defines Yemen's tragedy. A local power struggle weaponized by geopolitical rivals who treat a sovereign nation as a battlefield in someone else's war. And exit, leaving the ruins and the dead when their strategic interests are satisfied or exhausted. To understand what it means to be forgotten, you have to stand in the aisles of a supermarket in Sana'a. The shelves are not empty. This is not a simple famine story. The shelves are stocked. Bags of flour, boxes of tea, tins of tomato paste. What is absent is money. Not because people are unemployed, but because the banking system has completely collapsed. Salaries, when they are paid at all, are months or years in arrears. The Yemeni rial has lost over 70% of its value since 2015. And so, people stand at the register and pay with coupons. Vouchers distributed by aid organizations or employers who cannot produce cash. The aisles are silent. Dr. Al-Wazir has not received a regular salary in over 4 years. He arrives at the hospital at 7 every morning regardless, because his patients have no one else. In the maternity ward, nurses share a single pair of sterile gloves across multiple procedures. In the pediatric unit, children are treated for cholera, a disease that was nearly eradicated from Yemen before the war, because of garbage collectors went unpaid for 8 months. Stopped working, waste accumulated in the streets, monsoon rains washed bacteria into the water supply, and a preventable epidemic exploded across a population that could no longer afford clean water. More than 300,000 cases were recorded in a single outbreak. The statistics of Yemen's humanitarian crisis are almost too large to hold in the mind. 80% of the population, over 24 million people, requires some form of urgent humanitarian aid. More than 60% live on less than $1 a day. A child dies every 10 minutes from preventable causes: malnutrition, infection, dehydration. But statistics deaden us. They allow us to nod at enormity and move on. What keeps the enormity alive is the particular and the personal. Consider Fatima, 15 years old, from a village outside Hodeidah. She was married at 14, not because her parents didn't love her, but because they couldn't feed her. Child marriage has skyrocketed across Yemen as families facing destitution see it as a way to transfer the burden of feeding a daughter to another household. In some areas, nearly 1 in 3 girls is married before she turns 18. They become mothers while they are still children themselves, in a country where the maternal health system has largely collapsed. For the children who remain in school, and many don't, because schools have been bombed or converted into displacement shelters, childhood wears a strange armor. You will see boys of 8 or 10 driving pickup trucks at speed through broken streets. You will see teenagers, some barely tall enough to hold a rifle upright, standing at military checkpoints with weapons across their chests. Both sides of the conflict have recruited minors. They are given a gun and a cause in place of a childhood. Women in Houthi-controlled areas face a specific, suffocating set of restrictions. They are required to wear black, not the varied colored abayas of traditional Yemeni custom, but a standardized black mandated by the new authorities. They may not travel without a male guardian or mahram. Female aid workers have been detained. Female journalists have disappeared. The public space that Yemeni women once navigated with relative freedom, working as teachers, nurses, traders, has contracted sharply. And yet, every afternoon, at approximately 2 o'clock, life in Yemen does something extraordinary. It pauses. Not from despair, but from a ritual older than the war. Men gather in the mafraj, the high room of the house, or in communal spaces leaning back on embroidered cushions to chew khat, the mild stimulant plant whose bitter leaves are a fixture of Yemeni social life. For 2 or 3 hours, the pace of business stops. Tribal disputes are mediated over khat. Friendships are maintained. Grief is shared. In a profound and painful irony, in a nation running critically short of water, more than half of all available agricultural water is used to grow khat. It is simultaneously the country's coping mechanism and its most significant drain on a scarce resource. But if khat is the social glue, karam, the ancient code of hospitality, is the deeper infrastructure. Even families who have almost nothing will insist on sharing their meal of salta, a rich meat and vegetable stew, traditionally eaten communally from a single pot, with anyone who arrives at their door. In a land where every other system has failed, this one has not. Perhaps the most humbling proof. Even now, in its hardest decade, Yemen is hosting approximately 61,000 refugees from Somalia and Ethiopia who have crossed dangerous waters seeking asylum in a land that is itself seeking mercy from the world. This is how Yemen functions when functioning is nearly impossible. Not through institutions, but through the accumulated weight of 3,000 years of human solidarity. A culture that has learned, over many generations of hardship, to turn toward one another rather than away. There is also the matter of music. In a country where so much public life has been restricted, and where both the Houthi authorities in the north and conservative factions in the south have moved to limit public performance, music has retreated indoors, but it has not disappeared. In the evenings, In the private rooms of Sanaa's old towers, families still gather around the oud, the ancient lute that Yemen gave to the world, and sing the slow, ornamented songs of the Yemeni classical tradition. These songs speak of lost loves and remembered landscapes, of the sea off Aden and the coffee terraces of the highlands. They are songs about longing for a home that is still, technically, present, which makes them the most heartbreaking kind. To sing them is an act of cultural insistence, a refusal to let the war define the full dimension of what it means to be Yemeni. There is a word journalists who cover Yemen use when they talk about their work: access. Or rather, the absence of it. Yemen is one of the most restricted countries on earth for foreign press. Entry requires permissions that are rarely granted and frequently revoked. Those who do get in are routinely escorted by government or Houthi minders who control the itinerary, monitor every conversation, and make clear, without needing to say it explicitly, that certain questions will have consequences for the source, not the journalist. Those who do get in are routinely escorted by government or Houthi minders who control the itinerary, monitor every conversation, and make clear to calm, without needing to say it explicitly, that certain questions will have consequences for the source, not the journalist. This is not an accident of geography. It is a deliberate architecture of silence, maintained by every armed faction in the conflict. The Houthis have imprisoned Yemeni journalists, some of whom remain on death row for the act of reporting. The internationally recognized government has restricted access to areas under its nominal control. Even aid organizations find their operations constrained, their staff occasionally detained, their data difficult to gather in the most affected areas. What cannot be seen cannot generate outrage. And what does not generate outrage does not generate funding. At the international level, a more diffuse but equally damaging force has taken hold: donor fatigue. As other crises have emerged, more visible, more cinematically urgent, more politically legible, Yemen has slipped steadily down the priority list. In recent years, the United Nations Yemen humanitarian response plan has received less than half of the billions of dollars it requires annually. The shortfall is not abstract. In 2023, the World Food Programme was forced to suspend food assistance to millions of the most vulnerable families in northern Yemen, families already displaced, already hungry because the money simply did not arrive. Some of those families now beg in the streets of Sana'a for a single kilogram of flour. Meanwhile, the silence is consuming Yemen's physical memory. UNESCO has listed the Old City of Sana'a, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1986, a 2,500-year-old living city, as endangered. Not just from bombs, though the bombing has been catastrophic, but from neglect. Ancient gingerbread houses are crumbling for want of maintenance. The Camarilla windows, those stunning stained glass panels that cast colored light across the floors of old Sana'a's homes, are being replaced with cheap modern glass because the craftsmen who made them are leaving, because there is no money to pay them to stay. The ancient walls of Zabid, where algebra was born, are surrendering slowly to time and indifference, a fragile manuscript of human wisdom turning quietly back into dust. But the world's silence has produced an unexpected consequence, and it is this: the Yemeni people are not waiting to be remembered. They have begun the work of remembering themselves. In a program that grew quietly, in the midst of the chaos, thousands of young Yemenis, many of them unemployed, many of them displaced, are being trained in traditional masonry and woodcraft by the older craftsmen who still hold the knowledge. They are learning to mix the specific muds and binders used in Sana'a's towers. They are learning to carve the gypsum relief patterns that decorate the facades of ancient homes. They are carrying buckets of material up winding stairs that have not been repaired in decades, and they are fixing them by hand. They are rebuilding the walls of their civilization while the future remains uncertain, because they understand something their politicians and foreign patrons seem not to: that when the war ends, there must be something left to return to. And in the deep desert of the Hadramaut Valley, one of the most remote places in the world, something else persists. For 360 days a year, the white shrine of the prophet Hud sits silent against jagged cliffs, a virtual ghost town baking in the desert sun. But for 1 week every year, tens of thousands of pilgrims pour in from across the Islamic world, from Indonesia, Malaysia, East Africa, the diaspora communities of every continent. They fill the barren valley with the sound of thousands of voices chanting in unison, turning a stretch of empty desert into a sea of white, and the air into something electric with shared devotion. The Ziyarah, the annual pilgrimage, is a reminder that Yemen's connections to the rest of the world did not end with the war. They went underground. They are waiting. Yemen exists today in a tension that the world finds genuinely difficult to hold in its mind, a gap between a civilization of extraordinary depth and a crisis of extraordinary severity. Its story is a mirror held up to the worst tendencies of the international order. It highlights the willingness of powerful states to use smaller nations as battlefields for their own rivalries. They supply weapons, impose blockades, and call it strategic interest, only to divert their attention the moment the cameras move on. The proxy war in Yemen is not a conflict between Yemenis and Yemenis at its deepest level. It is a conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, fought at Yemeni expense with Yemeni lives. This is the vicious cycle that Yemen's story exposes. The cycle in which geopolitical rivals convert sovereign nations into arenas, leaving behind rubble and grief, and a generation of children who grew up knowing only war. And yet, what Yemen also reveals, perhaps more powerfully, is the extraordinary resilience of culture when it is rooted deeply enough. The mud brick towers of Shibam have outlasted every empire that considered itself permanent. The Kamaria windows have filtered morning light through 5 centuries of conquest and collapse. The Code of Karam has survived foreign invasion, civil war, famine, and the systematic looting of the state, because it does not live in institutions. It lives in people. In the baker who lights his tandoor at 4 in the morning in a dark lane of Sana'a, because the neighborhood needs bread. In the grandmother who sweeps the stone steps of a house older than most nations. In the young mason pressing mud between ancient bricks, learning a craft his grandfather taught him, choosing to rebuild rather than abandon. Perhaps the most remarkable lesson from Yemen is precisely this, that hospitality, karam, is not a luxury practiced in times of abundance. It is a discipline practiced most faithfully in times of scarcity. The Yemeni people, in the midst of the world's largest humanitarian crisis, are still opening their doors to refugees who have nowhere else to go. They have less than almost anyone on earth, and they are still sharing it. Civilizations are not measured in the height of their buildings or the size of their economies. They are measured in the strength of the bonds between people, the invisible architecture of mutual obligation, care, and dignity that holds a society together when every other structure has fallen. By that measure, Yemen, despite everything, remains standing. There is also a question this story poses directly to those of us watching from outside. What does it mean to be informed and do nothing? The information about Yemen is available. The statistics are published. The satellite images of destroyed hospitals are accessible. The UN reports are downloadable. The gap between knowing and acting, between awareness and response, is not a gap of information. It is a gap of attention. We have been trained by the sheer volume of global crisis to ration our concern. To decide, perhaps unconsciously, that some tragedies are more legible than others, some victims more sympathetic, some wars more morally clear. Yemen resists all those easy categorizations. It is a complex conflict with no clean heroes. And complexity in the attention economy is expensive. But complexity is also the closest thing to truth. And truth, applied to Yemen, is this: a people of remarkable depth and generosity are being destroyed systematically and internationally, while the world averts its gaze. That is not a geopolitical abstraction. That is Dr. Al-Wazir putting on gloves at 7 in the morning. That is Fatima's daughter, born into a war she did not choose. That is the young mason climbing the stairs of a 500-year-old tower with a bucket of mud and the intention to make it last another 500 years. Our journey through Yemen ends here, at the crossroads of history and neglect. We began by asking how one of the most fascinating and historically vital places on Earth could simply become the world's most forgotten country. The answer, it turns out, is not a mystery. It is a process, slow, deliberate, and maintained by powerful interests on every side of the conflict. Yemen was not forgotten by accident. It was made invisible. One restricted journalist, one suspended aid shipment, one unreported airstrike at a time. But invisibility is not the same as absence. Yemen is entirely, irreducibly here. It is here in the baker arriving at his shop before the city wakes, lighting his tandoor in the dark. It is here in the 500 mud towers of Shibam standing in the desert sun, unchanged for half a millennium. It is here in the voices of tens of thousands of pilgrims filling the Hadramaut Valley for one extraordinary week each year. A sound that carries across the desert and out of reach of every blockade ever imposed. It is here in Dr. Al-Wazir still arriving at the hospital every morning. In Fatima, navigating a life no 15-year-old should have to navigate. In the young masons pressing ancient mud into ancient walls, choosing to mend what others have broken. Yemen does not need the world's pity. It deserves the world's wonder and its conscience. It is a reminder that the infrastructure of human kindness does not require electricity, running water, or a functioning banking system. It requires only the decision, made again every morning, to treat the person in front of you as blessing rather than a burden. As the sun sets over the turquoise waters of Socotra, where dragon's blood trees still weep their ancient resin into the wind, and as the scent of frankincense drifts through the narrow lanes of Sana'a, one truth remains: Yemen is still here. It is a forgotten earth where time still breathes, waiting for a world that will finally stop looking away, and for a future where peace can restore what war has taken, returning this land, at last, to its rightful name, Arabia Felix, the land of happiness.